by having, the Spaniard, it depicts, our Spanish colonial past, the indigenous person, and those coming together of those two cultures represents us, the mestizaje or the Chicanos. And at the same time, he said that we should be proud of our heritage and our history, and also understand that we are a mixture of different races, and that's why he included, a black man, Malcolm X. But it's deeper than that. It has a lot of meanings, because he's also representing the political nature of Malcolm X and the importance of that. But his like the great Mexican masters, he would tell us that murals were important because they were the people's art, and it was how you not only you gave the people art that they could see, and it didn't cost them anything, but it was also educational, and that was part of what he was trying to do here. And he was very political, of course, and I remember when he was doing this, he talked about, of course, Benito Juarez being the first indigenous president in the Americas, but he went in and explained all these different aspects of it. But one of the parts that I thought was a little controversial was when he did Jesus on the Christ, and the last thing he did was he put this money sign there. And the reason he did that, what he told me, was that it represented the greed of the Catholic Church, because during the height of the Chicano movement, there was a big public outcry amongst a lot of Chicanos in terms of the church and their history and what they stood for. So he was making a political statement about the Catholic Church, and I thought that the local Catholic Church and the priests would have a problem with it, but they never complained. In fact, I remember one of the priests, Father Frank, coming out and seeing the mural and voiced no concern about the political statement of it. But this mural ended up being a real source of pride, because it was the first mural that he put up in Chino, and it was a community event. I mean, a lot of people would I hung out with him for hours when he was doing this, and people would come and go, and he would use that as an opportunity to educate people, and it was just fascinating watching him, and at the same time I was learning. But besides the meaning of it, just the artistic beauty of it is, to me, is incredible, and it's powerful.
Joe, I want to go back over to this mural that I don't believe you had seen before in Corona, California, and you and I both made the comment that we were not familiar that my Tío ever really had guns or talked about guns, or he used guns and so forth. And I mentioned to you that I questioned Charlie, the other artist that painted with him, why does my Tío have a gun? Why, what's that about? And then I kind of explained that he told me, hey, this is the brush and the pen and the pencil. Those are our new weapons. And why don't you tell us a little about your thoughts about that?
Well, Chano, in talking to him, would often talk about the importance of the Mexican Revolution, and talk to us in terms of how we were a revolutionary people in terms of our history. And he connected that to what was going on in the 70s in terms of another revolution, where we were trying to make social change. So he used a lot of images of the Mexican Revolution and tied it to what was going on at the time. But he, in fact, was also a real proponent of using art as a way to make change by educating people. And in this particular mural, with Flores Magón, is a good example of what he was doing. He was educating us, because most of us hadn't even heard of Flores Magón, and that was part of what he was doing. He was educating us through his artwork and inspiring us to pursue other ways to make social change, like getting formal education.
When I described this to you, and I mentioned how he used Gonzalez here, and how many of the students now in the 2000 really don't, first of all, know what Gonzalez means or understand what it represents, but you also have to explain to them what unfortunately you and I know about, and that's that he's dressed in counties, and in LA County, this is how you had to wear your jail suit, and instead of being your name, it was your number, and he kind of tricked everybody and put the date there for the number. So interesting, again, use of symbols, artistry, and so forth. But you brought up a point earlier about him using the masters, and there's probably a real classic example in this one. If you take a look at this particular soldado, this soldier, and Jose Clemente Orozco, when he painted, he would oftentimes paint somebody and you did not see the whites of their eyes, and he would do that intentionally, so you didn't know exactly what they were looking at, or were they kind of willing to die for anything in terms of the revolution. So that's interesting that in the other larger painting in Chino, you see the hands, and those large hands were very symbolic of what Diego Rivera used to paint, and as well as in the other mural from UC Riverside, where you see the ligaments and the muscles and so forth, and you see examples of cubism. So there's a lot of different kinds of influences, again, the masters as well as styles of art. So I know for me, when I began doing this, not being an art major, I learned a lot about art in terms of how colors represent, but then I also obviously learned about the Rivera and Orozco and Siqueiros.
Well, you're right, and he had studied all the great Mexican masters, because he would often tell me about them and their importance in history, and would tell me that that he would learn from them, and which is way different than copying them, because he would take influences from them, and you could see if you were to dissect his work, somebody that's trained in art history would see the different influences that he has, but with his own particular style. I did want to go back to this Flores Magón and the use of the symbol CS or Gonzafos. One of the things, Chano was really clever, creative, and I could only guess, but I would think that what he was doing there was, one, not only just putting it because CS represented, forever respected, hands off, don't touch this work, but it was also, in a way, kind of making a political statement, because he's saying, yes, this is a Mexican national, this is somebody who's from Mexico, but he's adding his Chicano little touch to him, and making that connection between this who's really a revolutionary at the time, and connecting it to what was going on at the time in the 70s in terms of the Chicano movement. I find it interesting that the CS has now gotten a resurgence, and I see a lot of young Chicano artists, particularly in San Diego, who are using it. In fact, there's this one company that now is selling a lot of T-shirts and artwork with CS. So I always say, in a lot of ways, he was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you want to move over to the mural at UCR, and we can maybe do a little discussion there.
Sure.